How's it going, everyone? Hope you're all doing good. Welcome to another episode of Drawn to Create, the podcast where we draw and talk. You know how this works by now. This is episode 4, and so we are 4 weeks in. I'm enjoying these videos, and you all seem to be enjoying them as well. I also enjoy trying to do a drawing each week, and the drawings usually I normally just spend about a day and a half, maybe 2 days, working on each of these drawings. I know that some of you have been commenting and asking how long they take me to finish, and I think the one that I did in the previous episode, that took me about 8 hours, and I pretty much did that all in one day. I mean, I usually just dedicate a full day to doing the drawing, and then I can get up early, and I have hopefully planned what it is I'm going to be drawing in advance, and then I can just get on with executing the drawing. And then normally towards the end of the day, when I start to get a bit tired, maybe, it starts to get a bit tedious, I'm usually at the rendering stage of the drawing, so that's something that I can kind of do subconsciously, after I've done all of the construction and stuff. I'm talking about the actual process of drawing here. But the rendering stage towards the end of the drawing is usually the point where I have some music on, or I'm listening to some podcasts, some audiobooks or whatever, because rendering is something that I can it's just something that I do naturally now. It's not really anything that I need to dedicate all of my focus to, whereas at the beginning of a drawing, when I start a drawing and I'm working out the perspective, or I'm just technically going through it and planning the actual construction of the drawing, the scene, then that takes a lot more time. And usually if I can get that done in the morning when my brain is fresh and I'm wide awake, hopefully if it's not too early in the morning, usually if I get that out of the way, then I can confidently carry on and finish the drawing. So I'm slowly developing a process that I work through, which is helping me execute and finish these drawings in time each week for an episode of this. And also within these drawings, I'm sort of exercising this, it's kind of like a method of learning how to draw. It's basically, I think I spoke about it in a past episode, project based learning, where, I try and involve some stuff within the drawings that I need to improve on. A lot of the time I try and add some people within these scenes that I'm drawing, because I want to get better at how I include people within these environments that I'm drawing. And so I try and force myself to challenge myself pretty much to add a lot of that stuff in there. And then if I put it within a project, I know that what I'm drawing, I'm not just doing these separate studies with no real direction. I am creating a full illustration with these. And usually I try and cover up at least about half an A4 piece of paper. So these drawings are about size A5, which isn't too bad. I mean, it's enough for me anyways, because a lot of you have probably realised by now that I'm a sucker for detail. I always have to throw a lot of detail within the images that I draw, and some people say it gives them anxiety looking at my detailed drawings, which I understand. It's a bit hectic sometimes, but that's just what I like. I enjoy just paying a lot of attention to minor things which usually are unnecessary within the images. Like if there's a table, I could just draw the table, but then I like to spend time decorating the table or adding objects on that table just to add to it, because I think sometimes you can tell stories within the small details that you incorporate within these images. And of course, there's a lot of other artists out there whose work is a big influence on mine. Jeff Darrow, MC Escher, those are a few artists that I can just pick off right now. I remember when I came across MC Escher's work when I was younger, and it fried my brain, because I was looking at it, and the illusions that he creates on paper, it wasn't necessarily the illusions that he had created which really appealed to me. It was the execution and how he rendered the drawings, these kind of believable but not realistic worlds. That sort of fascinated me, and I remember I used to recreate a lot of his drawings when I was younger as well. And then of course Jeff Darrow, the comic book artist, I recommend checking out his work. His work is pretty amazing. Like yeah, but I might do an episode where I just talk about drawing style in general. I probably will actually, because I'm going to do an episode where I just talk about my drawing style and my inspirations and influences in general. So I'll do an episode where I talk about all of this stuff more in depth, because what I have planned for this episode is I'm going to talk about something that I think is important, and I can also relate to it and give you a personal example. And it's pretty much around the idea of evolving as an artist. And of course, this is a big subject to get into. I'll probably build on this within future episodes, but I haven't really given myself much of a direction with this. I'm just going to sort of talk about this and improvise. I usually don't read off a script, obviously, for these podcasts, so I'm just going to go with it and talk about it. But yeah, as a starting point, I think that evolving your work is important, but then also evolving as an artist personally is important, and this comes naturally. I think as you grow older, you experience more things, and all of your experiences and interactions with the world, with people, your experiences and all of that stuff sort of influences your work, because the artwork that you produce is kind of like it is a product of you as a human. I mean, you create something that comes from you. It's got to come from somewhere, right? And so, it's a product of many things. The list goes on. You can't really just shorten the list down, reduce it down to a few things, because I think the artwork is a factor or a product of pretty much, an endless amount of things. And so, as we evolve naturally, as we get older, we learn new things. Maybe we learn new things subconsciously, maybe we learn them unconsciously, or maybe we are going out there and consciously trying to learn new things. And I think that's what's important. We have to be on the watch. We have to be looking around and trying to pick up new things, new bits of information that we can use and throw into our work and increase our knowledge as artists and creative people. There's so much out there. It's such a vast world, and especially these days with the online world, we have it all at our fingertips. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, and I think you need to be aware of yourself as an artist as well, because I think you need sort of like a limit on it. You need kind of a way to filter everything, because if you know what it is that you like, or what you are interested in, or what it is that you want to learn, then you can filter what it is you are looking at, and everything that you observe and experience will hopefully be relevant to what it is you are trying to do. And so evolving as an artist is very important. Personally, I remember, let's try and talk about this more practically. So when I was drawing a few years ago, when I would do a lot of the portrait stuff and things like that, I would mainly work from photographs. And so I would obsess over the details presented within these photographs, and my intention was to recreate these existing images on paper and render them in pencil. And so at the end of the day, what I would have is I'd have my drawing, which is a drawing of this image, which has already been, the photographer, whoever took the photo that I was working from using as reference, that photographer kind of did a lot of the work, and I was just sort of recreating that in a sense. And there's value in it. I mean, I'm not writing it off at all. I spent a lot of years just working from photographs, and I think it was valuable because it did benefit me in being able to render drawings. And when I was actually copying images, maybe images of environments and stuff, of cities, I was learning how to actually draw these subjects, and it really helped me increase my visual library. And so when it comes to actually drawing stuff like that from my imagination now, I have this sort of visual library, this catalogue of images in my head that I can rely on, and all of that stuff goes into the work that I produce now, when I'm relying on my own imagination. And so, going back to what I was just talking about, I would use a lot of these photographs and I would recreate them and draw them, portraits, realistic drawings. That was the style, realistic drawing. And the intention was to accurately recreate the photograph, and that's how I'd judge the success of the final drawing. How accurate was it to the actual photograph I was using as reference? And so that was what I was doing, and I would do that for a few years. I would draw all of these portraits. You've probably seen some of them, some of the earlier videos that I uploaded on YouTube. And inevitably I got better at doing this, and it came to the point where I was able to just confidently do a drawing like this, and it was easy, if I'm being honest. It got to the point where there wasn't any real challenge anymore. When I was first learning, the challenge was the exciting part, because I didn't really know how the drawing was going to end up, and I was just jumping into it and trying to execute it the best that I could. And that was my aim. That was the challenge that I was giving myself. And as soon as I got to the point where that challenge wasn't really there anymore, because I'd improved to the point where I could draw and render something like that easily. And so because of that, I became less motivated to do some of these drawings, and I became really dissatisfied with not the result but the actual process of creating, because I didn't really drawing from my imagination when I was younger. It was pretty, like, I couldn't really comprehend it, and that sounds kind of stupid, but because drawing for me for such a long time was just drawing images that already existed. As a kid I would draw from comic books, or I'd draw my favourite cartoons from TV shows and stuff. And so, using my own imagination, I mean, what do I have to offer? So it was a slow transition towards this point of finally realizing that what I was producing wasn't really a product of me. I never really communicated anything personal in my work. I never really put any of myself in my work. I was more or less just a technician, and I'd create these images that were, technically appreciated, and when you present them to people who maybe aren't as involved with drawing, or maybe they're not creative in any way, when they see drawings like this, these well rendered and executed portraits of things that they can relate to, maybe some actors out of a TV show, then they appreciate images like that. It's very commercial, and they look at that and they view drawing as they view successful drawing as drawings that accurately depict something that they can comprehend. At least that's what I gathered from my own experience. I mean, when I would show family, friends, these portraits that I had done, they would really appreciate this ability that I had to execute and render a drawing as well as that. And I'm not devaluing that in any way. It definitely does take some skill to be able to render a drawing accurately, like those drawings. And people, I think that's where the substance lies within them. I mean, it's this ability to render the drawing accurately, and I feel like once, as an artist personally, once you have the ability to do that pretty well, then you've sort of completed that task, and in a way it's time to move on. And, as I gradually made that decision to start relying on my own imagination a bit, or I think I slowly shifted into using reference, but manipulating the reference a bit, so adding stuff to it or combining reference images to create scenes. And that's technically what I still do to this day. I still sometimes, pull up some reference of objects that I need to draw within these images, and that's fine. Everyone uses reference. But the drawings which I eventually started to create wasn't a direct copy of an existing reference, if that makes sense. And so eventually I came to this decision. And it was a kind of a hard time, in my life, where I was a bit lost for direction in terms of the artwork that I was producing. I'd just finished college, and so I did study art as one of the subjects there, and I was sort of encouraged on that course to not really use my imagination that much. There was set tasks that you was given, and a lot of the time I was able to um, perform those tasks well by just drawing from existing reference images. But that's a whole other story for a whole nother episode, my experience at college and stuff like that. But obviously, you know that I didn't carry on studying art for numerous reasons. I went into architecture, but education, again, that's a topic for another podcast. So moving on from that, yeah, I got to this point where I no longer wanted to draw from photographs. I wanted to do something more personal, and I wanted to present myself as a person, as an artist through my work, and I wanted to have this really close relationship to the work that I was producing. And so, in order for me to do that, I have to put more of myself into it, obviously. And so, yeah, I started to rely on my own imagination more, manipulate reference images, do a lot of drawing like that. And it was uncomfortable at first. It was unexplored territory for me, but I kept going and kept trying to produce images. I also came across, believe it or not, I didn't really know much about the fundamentals of art back then. And so I started to, look into the actual process of learning how to draw a bit more. And I was immersing myself in this world of drawing, and I started to find a lot of concept artists, listen to a lot of drawing podcasts, find and read books, and I started to take in all of this information and try and order it and create a roadmap for myself so that I would get better at drawing from my imagination. And so it came to this point where I was trying to figure out what I needed to learn to improve. And obviously, the art fundamentals are very important. I think the most important one is perspective, and that is something that I realized. And so I would spend a lot of time, creating drawings that exercised the use of perspective. And I started to read a lot of books. I started to learn a lot more. And I also, because this was before I started YouTube, actually, no, I did have some videos uploaded onto YouTube already. Some of the realistic drawing stuff, which you've likely seen if you've been on the channel for a while. Or maybe you haven't, because I know that my audience has kind of transformed over the time that I've been creating various types of different content. And so that's just a natural result of that. And yeah, I also did have a basic understanding of some of the fundamentals, but I was unaware that there was titled fundamentals. I did practice some perspective with a lot of the design work that I had done prior to actually making this decision to draw from my imagination. I mean, I did learn stuff about perspective when I would do all of that, and some of the other fundamentals in there as well. And so I was drawing from my imagination when it came to a lot of the design work that I would do for projects at school and stuff like that. So I wasn't completely separated from that. I just didn't really have the intention of using all of that stuff to draw from my imagination until I made the decision to bring that into my artwork. And in order for me to draw from my imagination, that depended on me having a knowledge of perspective and some of the other fundamentals. And so I was learning a lot more. I was involving myself in this process of learning how to draw, and I would read all of these books. And then eventually, because I was trying to do YouTube alongside this as well, it was quite challenging because I was learning all of these new aspects surrounding drawing, but then I was also still producing some realistic drawing tutorials and stuff, because I wanted to keep the YouTube channel going. But eventually I did make that jump and gradually shifted into making content around the stuff that I was learning personally. And so once I got to that point, it became a lot easier because the stuff that I was learning, I was also demonstrating in videos. And I think in a way that kind of really benefited me, because once I had learnt something and I was comfortably demonstrating that within my work, I would make a tutorial on that, on a subject. And going through this process of making a tutorial on something, it helps you process it. I mean, once you try and figure out the best way to demonstrate and articulate some kind of drawing technique to an audience, it really helps you reinforce that technique in your own mind and helps you sort of gain a better understanding for it, because you are able to communicate to another person. And yeah, that's kind of an opportunity that I had, and I was taking advantage of that. And so, yeah, it's been this continuous process of learning new things and trying to improve my ability to draw from my imagination that's really been attracting me to drawing these past few years, because I'm finally in this unexplored territory and I've got these challenges, I've got things to learn. And so that's what appeals to me, that's what keeps me coming back and creating. And then YouTube in general just gave me a reason to create more, because I had built an audience, and so I wanted to give them something, give you guys something. And so, yeah, that's kind of like a personal journey from, it's kind of vague as well. I didn't really go into too much detail around some of the stages that I kind of skimmed over. So I can definitely go into more detail and talk about my experience at college, or this perception of realistic drawing and how it compares to what I'm currently doing, where I'm drawing from my imagination more. I'll talk about all of that stuff throughout these episodes, I'm sure. But yeah, currently, like many artists out there, I'm on this never-ending journey where I'm trying to get better, learn new things around drawing, and improve my work. And I'm always looking to learn new things. One of the things that I do want to improve upon is the ability to add colour maybe to my work. I do have the intention of covering colour and getting into all of that eventually. I'm just a bit busy at the minute because I'm sort of it's weird, because if I learn something, if I'm comfortable with something, like perspective I'm pretty confident with, I can confidently make videos on that. And so a few years ago I was practicing perspective, and now a few years later I am creating tutorials and demonstrating perspective, right? Whereas if I'm going to learn colour, then it'll be a few years later until I start covering colour on the channel, because I need to learn it and then apply it, and then finally I'll be able to hopefully articulate it and demonstrate it and teach it. And yeah, that's kind of, I think, the next step for me is adding colour to the work that I'm producing right now, to a lot of the drawings. But I want to do it in a way which sort of complements the pencil drawings, and I have done it in the past, and in a few videos recently I did try adding colour using Photoshop and using some of the effects on there so that the pencil work, the textures that I was creating when rendering, was still visible, and it created quite a nice style. And I think that's something that I'm going to take further, and hopefully that's going to evolve in the future. And so yeah, colour is a big subject. It's definitely something that I'll have to look into and learn. And all of this stuff excites me. It doesn't demotivate me, or it doesn't cause any discourage, because all of this stuff is still there to learn. It excites me because there's something on the horizon, and that's the way that I think we should approach it. But I've been talking about myself pretty much all of this episode, and I have some notes here to actually get into just stuff in general that's surrounding the subject of evolving as an artist. One of them says professionals are always learning and adding to their craft, which is true. I listen to some podcasts. A lot of concept artists who work in the industry are always, well, it's necessary for them to always keep updated with the modern technology and improve as artists. They're always sharing information, trying to come together and improve together. And they've got all of these new tools which are continuously updating all of this modern technology, 3D softwares, all of this stuff which can be, used to their advantage. And I can imagine that, being in that industry, it's just moving so fast that it can be quite overwhelming sometimes. But their work is improving really fast because of it. And I know that my work is more traditional, but being in industry, if you want to have a professional career, working in a games studio or a movie studio, you need to, know your stuff, and you're going to have this ability to be able to learn. And I think that's really important moving forward, especially the way things are looking in the future. The most important thing is having the capacity to learn new things and adapt. I do think that's going to be a big selling point, especially when, robots take over and stuff and start taking the jobs. Then we're going to have to figure something out. So, yeah, continuously learning new things. Not, it doesn't have to be like continuously. I'm talking about like a slow, gradual, improvement of picking up on new things as you go. Just if you're immersing yourself within the art world and you are learning new things, actively looking for information that might improve your work, then it's something that will happen naturally over time if you are going to be applying these new things and applying them in the right way as well. Trying to just fit them in or figure out the best way to actually apply this new learned knowledge to what you know already. And then I think what will happen is it will either add to your existing work and improve it, or maybe you learn something that completely transitions your work into a new style, into something that's pretty much separated from what you did previously, but it's something that appeals to you more, and so you sort of take that big jump and start working forward, but all that you have done previously, it's not gone to waste because you wouldn't have got to that point, that realization that you have now, if it wasn't for all of that. And one of the good things about drawing is that it's a lifelong profession, and so you are able to really master it if you allow yourself. It's not like football, for instance, where you have to retire when you get to a certain age, and there's sort of like an age limit on it. I mean, drawing, as you get older, you get better, and you can continuously keep doing it until you die, pretty much. I mean, you're gonna have this lifelong collection of work, and it'll be good to be able to look at the work that you did throughout the centuries and see that transition, and hopefully you'll be able to see this process that you went through to eventually be able to create some masterpiece at the end of your lifetime, which is quite a nice thought. Another thing which I think is worth me addressing and briefly talking about is style, and I'm going to do a full episode on the subject of drawing style and this idea that an artist has this unique style which they are known for. But in terms of what we have just been discussing, maybe if an artist is so dedicated to one specific style, maybe it will be hard for them to evolve their work in any other direction. Maybe that style is adaptable, maybe it can move about and there's a bit of flexibility in there, but maybe if a style is so, I don't know, like so permanent in a way, that there isn't really much direction with it, maybe an artist is a slave to one style, a prisoner to drawing in a certain way, and they don't have this ability to be able to build on that because anything they add to it will just distort this style completely, and it won't have the actual appearance that it did previously. And so that's quite an interesting thought. Maybe a style is a limitation for an artist. Maybe it just stagnation, this complacency where an artist is so loyal and dedicated to one way of working, to one style, that they don't really allow themselves the privilege of being able to try anything new, to be able to learn anything new. And maybe it's a better alternative to be flexible as an artist and open to trying all of these new things, maybe not having a style. But I think style just emerges naturally as part of the package, and maybe an artist who has built a career around one unique style doesn't really give a shit because, they've been so successful with it, and it's not really been done before. Maybe it's quite an original way of working, and so, obviously loads of stuff can come from that, and maybe that's them. Maybe that is their lifelong career, and that's enough for them, and maybe they've even fallen in love with this way of working so much that nothing else even appeals to them anymore. Maybe they finally found that one thing that really resonates with them, and I think that's what a lot of us are trying to find anyways. We just sometimes don't really find it. We just continuously keep looking, and by doing that we are picking up on all of these new things. And so the artwork as a result is this ever developing, evolving product of an artist's pursuit in learning how to draw or attempting to become a master at drawing and creating artwork. And maybe there's no such thing as being a master at something. I think maybe you can get so good at something that you can do it subconsciously. And you see this all the time, like a good artist maybe cannot explain his process because it just comes so natural to him. Like it's just part of him that he cannot articulate or communicate what he is doing in any way because it's just so ingrained within him. And I think that's kind of like a product of this idea of mastery. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. And I suppose it goes back to that discussion around what's better, being a generalist or a specialist. Should you dedicate your life to becoming a specialist in one thing, or should you just keep exploring all of these different things and then be a generalist at all of these different things? And it really depends on what you want to do, and again it comes down to your own intentions. But I don't think there's one way to go about it. I don't think there's one way which is best. It all depends on what you want to do and what you like to do. That's really what it comes down to. Anything in life is just, if you enjoy doing it, then you don't need to justify it to anyone. That's all that really matters. If you just find something you enjoy doing and do that, and everything else really doesn't matter. Anyways, I think I'm going to leave it here. I do have like another little title here that says fear of moving on, being loyal to a style. And yeah, maybe there is a bit of fear in evolving as an artist. Maybe we spend so long trying to get to a point with our work that once we get there, we want to stay there and just keep doing that. And I've definitely been at that point, and maybe I am now. Maybe I'm just so used to following this schedule, making videos, that I don't really put much thought into the direction of my work and where it's heading. But then again, I think I do, because I do have an intention with it. I do have an idea of where I want to take it. And so yeah, let's end it here. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you can take something away from it. And this has been another episode of Drawn to Create. Keep commenting down below and ask me some questions. I do read them, and I do appreciate you watching these. As always, if you did enjoy this, then please give the video a like, because that helps me out. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. And subscribe if you want to keep up to date. Maybe you want to see some more of these, so if you subscribe and put the notifications on, then you'll be notified every time I upload one of these. But I usually upload one of these every Sunday, so you know what to expect. And of course, keep drawing, keep creating, keep evolving, because that's what it's all about. That's what we have to do. We're like Pokemon, except we don't have a trainer to help us. We are left to our own devices, and it's up to us, but we'll get there. We do have a community of artists who are all on the same journey, and that's the next best thing. So yeah, maybe you are lucky enough to have some kind of mentor, which is kind of like a trainer. But anyways, I'll stop with these stupid analogies. Until next time, everyone, goodbye.